Hello, welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and this is week 6 of the 100 book challenge, where I have challenged myself to read 100 books that I already own before buying another book. And I'm standing out here on my back deck in the morning after the year's first snowfall. Doesn't really have anything to do with books, but I thought I would show you just a little bit of what it looks like in my backyard. Well, I hope you enjoyed that quick winter view. I take Teddy for his morning walk. He does not like the snow very much. At the end of the clip, look at his gaze of accusation. It's Tuesday morning, and I finished 3 books on Monday. I did not finish them start to finish. One was begun last week, one was begun on a Saturday, and one I did read entirely yesterday. So what was I reading? My 31st book was Mother Night by Curt Vonnegut. This is one of my favorite Curt Vonnegut books. I am reading in the Curt Vonnegut book club. It is also part of Remember December because it is a book that I've read twice before. It is the story of John W. Campbell. As a young boy, his father moved to Germany after World War II to start a business. So he was an American growing up in Germany. So he was very fluent in German and fitting with German society. Then comes the rise of Hitler and the Nazis. And Campbell is approached by an American spy and says, "We want you to spy on Germany for us. And you will do that by starting a radio propaganda broadcast praising the Nazis, but it will be coded with special messages for us to understand what's going on inside Nazi Germany." And Campbell was a professional playwright writing in German. His wife Helga was a German actress, so it fit perfectly. However, he was viewed as a loyal Nazi propagandist. And I'm going to read you a little bit from the first of this book. This is the introduction that Curt Vonnegut wrote. "This is the only story of mine whose moral I know. I don't think it's a marvelous moral. I simply happen to know what it is. We are what we pretend to be, so we must be careful about what we pretend to be." And I think that has a lot of value, because in this story, only 3 people know that Campbell is actually an American spy sending secret information. Everyone else thinks he's a loyal Nazi. So after World War II, he sort of has to go underground. But he doesn't stay underground forever. There are people looking for old Nazis. And Israel wants to take him to be tried as a war criminal. Of course, he's not really a war criminal. It's just that everyone thinks he's a war criminal. But if everyone thinks he's a war criminal and believes he's a war criminal, is he one? Does this handful, they're not a handful, even 3 people who know he's not, actually make him not a war criminal? Interesting question. And here's a little scene that I just think, a little bit of quotation that really highlights what I think Curt Vonnegut is about. He's talking to an ex-American soldier who was the one who captured him in World War II and originally turned him over. But, the U.S. government got him out the first time, but now he's in hiding. So he's talking to this ex-American soldier who's not had a great life. He has a wife, he has a lot of children, and a very bad job. Well, not a bad job, but a very low job. He's a dispatcher for custard trucks. And this is about 15 years after the war, early 60s. So this is Campbell talking to the man. And they're talking about their times in World War II. There are plenty of good reasons for fighting, but no good reason ever to hate without reservation, to imagine that God Almighty himself hates with you too. Where's evil? It's that large part of every man that wants to hate without limit, that wants to hate with God on its side. It's part of every man that finds all kinds of ugliness so attractive. Does that remind you of modern day America? Unfortunately, it reminds me of modern day America. And I really do like this book. It is, I think, my third favorite Kurt Vonnegut book. I think Cat's Cradle and Slaughterhouse-Five take the top notch. But this is a really good book that everyone should seek out. My 32nd book, the Dhammapada. This is a book of Buddhist scripture, allegedly or presumably written by the Buddha himself, although there's some questions about that. But this is to help people who are Buddhist think Buddhist thoughts. It is part of a project that I am working on. I am listening to all 5 of the great courses about major religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I started off with Buddhism, even though I really should have started off with Hinduism. But I finished that great courses. I read one Buddhist flavored novel, Siddhartha, by Hermann Hesse last week. And this week I finished this book of scripture. Now, I read this pretty much straight through. I did start this last week before I went on my trip to Philadelphia, and I put it aside. But this is really not the type of book that you should read just straight through. You should read it, read a couple passages, and think about it, because that's really what Buddhism is trying to get you to do, is trying to get you to think for yourself. And I'm just going to quote you 2 passages which I found kind of interesting. Our life is shaped by our mind. We become what we think. Suffering follows an evil thought, as the wheels of a cart follow the oxen that draw it. We become what we think. Does that not also relate back to Kurt Vonnegut, that we are what we pretend to be? Curious little tidbit there. And now a second piece that I want to read. By oneself is evil done. By oneself one is injured. Do not do evil, and suffering will not come. Everyone has the choice to be pure or impure, and no one can purify another. That is another essential belief in Buddhism, is that you are responsible for your own destiny. There are no gods to reach up to and ask for forgiveness or ask for salvation. You are responsible for your own thoughts and your own deeds. And if you do evil in this world, evil will follow you and create suffering. Now, suffering, dukkha, is the actual Sanskrit or Pali word for that. And Pali is just a sort of variation on the Sanskrit language. And dukkha means suffering. And it's not, it's really sort of hard to describe what the nature of dukkha. But suffering is well enough. And if you do these bad thoughts, do these bad deeds, you will suffer. And if you are suffering, then you'll be tossed into the world again and reincarnated. While there are gods in Buddhism, they're not necessarily part of your spiritual path. You have to make your own spiritual path. And again, that related back to Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, where Siddhartha actually meets the Buddha, and he tells the Buddha, I believe in your teachings. I think they are true. But they are your teachings and your beliefs, and I must follow my own path. And that, again, goes back, and again, it was talked about in my live stream the other day, when you are responsible. No one can purify another. That you do have to follow your own path. And I will be reading at least one other Buddhist flavored novel, and that will be The Dharma Bums by Jack Kerouac. And then there's one other piece of nonfiction that I may get to this month, or maybe next month. That will be Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. I don't know quite when I'll get to it, but this is an interesting little experiment that I'm doing about reading about all these religions. My 33rd book is really a bit of a novelette. It is just a short story that just went on a little bit too long. But I did purchase it as an individual book from Amazon when it was free on October 31st. They were selling lots of novels and short stories and novelettes for free. And I picked this up. This is Joel by Kayla Stevenson. I know absolutely nothing about this author. There is no about the author in this Kindle book. There is no about the author on the Amazon site. I'm going to presume that it's a woman or a man writing under a woman's name. This is a short work of horror. It is extreme horror. It starts off with a man named Joel. He is divorced, and he's trying to do good in his life. He's what every woman would kind of want in a divorced man, probably in his mid-30s. His age is never really specified. And then it switches. In the story, the good Joel is written in plain text. Then there goes to the story of a bad Joel, and that is told in bold font. Now, I think bold font was an unusual choice for the author. I think most authors would have chose italics, but she chose to tell this story in bold. So you can, well, it's easy to differentiate between two because one Joel is a good Joel, sort of idealized goodness, what every woman would want in a divorced middle-aged man. But the other Joel is a bad Joel. I mean, he's really, really bad. His apartment is a charnel house filled with parts and bodies and trash. And he likes to eat people. Now, unfortunately, while the author is going back between these two, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, one of these is not true. One of these is an imagination. Now, I was hoping for a little bit different outcome. I thought the author could have done a little bit of a better twist at the end, but it ended sort of where I expected it to. Now, this is almost certainly a self-published story. It is not a bad story. There are a couple of parts in the writing where I said, no, that's not right. You used the wrong word. The grammar isn't correct. And I'm really not good at proofreading, but I picked up a few of those instances. So someone who's good at proofreading, I think, would have found a little bit more than I did. Would I read more stories by Kayla Stevenson? Under the right circumstances, yes, I would. Would I seek out her stories based on this one? Probably not. Pip the cat is getting a chin and head rub. It's a bright, sunny morning here in Virginia, and I have finished my 34th book. And that was Donovan's Brain by Curt Siodmak. He was a German Jewish immigrant. And he got his big claim to fame writing the screenplay for The Wolfman, starring Lon Chaney Jr. Everyone knows the original Wolfman movie, but this is one of his novels. He wrote a few of them. This one was published in 1942. Oddly, in this book, World War II is not mentioned at all. But the story is there is a doctor in Arizona. He works alone. He is called by another doctor to the scene of a plane wreck. And on this plane wreck, there are some casualties. There is a man critically injured. The man is Donovan. He is known to be a very wealthy businessman who got his riches through a mail order business. And Donovan is dying. So what does this doctor do? He cuts out Donovan's brain and puts it in a vat to keep it alive. And yes, the brain is alive. And the brain develops a way to communicate and take over bodies, not its own. This is a really interesting old classic science fiction novel. Of course, the trope of the brain in the vat is kind of old. Well, it wasn't old when it was written, but it's kind of old now. And is scientifically, really sketchy. Especially sketchy being able to take over other minds. But when you overlook that little old anomaly, this is a fun novel. This is told as a series of diary entries from the doctor who takes out the brain. And it slowly becomes obvious that the brain wants the doctor to do something. The human behind the brain, Donovan, has a master plan. So this is also a bit of a mystery novel and a bit of a horror novel because there's this brain in a vat commanding people. And whether you think it's horror or it's science fiction, well, that's up to debate. But I had fun reading this. I'm fairly certain that the paperback version is completely out of print. Amazon was selling a Kindle version, so you probably have to go there to find it, or scrounge up your new used bookstores and find a copy. These old covers are just so much fun. Just look at that red face beaming with a brain underneath it. A lot of fun. Check it out. I am checking off my 35th book, although technically it's a DNF. DNFs do counter this challenge if I earnestly try the book, and the book was Hex by Thomas Olde Huevelt. It is a horror novel. It is set in the Hudson Valley, 2012-ish. And it is a story of Black Spring, a town that in the 17th century put a witch to death and sewed her eyes and mouth shut. And now the entire town and its inhabitants are haunted by the witch. If you live in the town, you cannot leave the town. Because if you leave, you will want to commit suicide. And people who move into the town get the curse as well. Now, my problem with this is, one, I really just did not get into the characters. Some of the main characters are teenagers, and the teenagers are not satisfied living in this town, and they're going to go after the witch, it looks like. And whenever you have teenagers trying to settle the score or a problem, it's just time to put the book down and go on to another book. Not only that, this town is helped in its exclusion. Are you ready for this? Are you sitting down Can you bear this? The military is helping them keep this witch under wraps, so the whole world does not know there's a witch in this town. Yes, the military. I hope you were sitting down. That huge disappointment. And that's why I stopped reading it. Also, it has a very bizarre problem. As I said, this book is set in the Hudson Valley. It was originally written in Dutch, and in the original Dutch version, it was set in the Netherlands. But for whatever reason, the translator, with the help of the author, decided to relocate the English translation to America. That's a whole subject for a different video. That I was just extremely disappointed in that choice. As an adult reader, I can handle stories set in the Netherlands. I don't have to have them relocated to America to appreciate them. Now, I did look at the afterwards from the author. He was really excited, and he mentions that, he's really rather fluent in English. It's not his native tongue, but he could help with the translation. He could read the English version with no problem. And he sort of got excited that he got to rewrite his book and give it a different ending. Well, I don't know the Dutch ending, and I don't know the American ending. And I never will, because this book just didn't capture my interest at all. Well, that is a wrap for week 6. The week is technically not quite over yet, but I'm not going to finish my current book before the week expires, so I will push that book, The Dharma Bums by Jack Kerouac, over into week number 7. And I'm ending where I started, on my back deck. It's not quite as cold, and there's no snow. At least that's something to be thankful for. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.